Howdy y'all, this is the Losman here, and I am giving another video presentation in what I would like to refer to as my Lazy Sunday Roundup. Now, this particular weekend is a Memorial Day weekend, so basically it's a long weekend, 3-day weekend, woohoo! So, as with any weekend, there's ample opportunity to go out there and get things done, and it was an interesting week, I will say that. It's going to be June soon, so we've got some big movies coming out pretty soon. And but before that, we talk about that. I'm gonna go ahead and give you a rundown of the week and let you know what went down. Okay, so usually in my segment, I usually go on with my Losman 300 challenge. I did watch some movies and I made an effort to watch some movies. I decided to go with a theme, which I will mention in a moment. But before that, I will talk about the first movie I watched. It's a movie called The Phoenix Forgotten. Now, Phoenix Forgotten is a found footage movie about a group of young students who go out in the Arizona desert and disappear. Why they disappear is unknown. 20 years later, little sister of one of the characters gets a hold of a video camera and a lost tape is found. So it is like I said, it's a found footage movie, pretty much similar to the Blair Witch Project. However, this one is based on a somewhat actual event. If you're familiar with the Phoenix Lights of the late 90s, it was a major UFO incident. So this movie plays into that, that trope of, the Phoenix Lights and something crazy, kooky, weird. But no, it's definitely worth a watch. I checked it out on Tubi. Now I decided to get back to some of the roots of horror, so I decided to delve into the world of the Giallo. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know. It's Italian for yellow, but Giallo. Either way, it is movies that are basically Italian crime thrillers. Now, the usual Giallo has some common themes to it. They're usually whodunits. You have a collection of beautiful women and gorgeous men, handsome men, manly men, and there's someone killing people. Usually, you'll see a black glove with a knife or some other instrument used to kill them, but it's invariably you don't see who it is. Oftentimes, it's from the killer's perspective. And the Giallos were popular from the 60s to the 1980s, and some of the more important names include like Mario Bava and Dario Argento. So I decided what I was going to do was delve into some of the early Giallos, mostly of Mario Bava, so that I can get a feel for what got the movement started. So the first movie I checked out was called Blood and Black Lace. Now, Blood and Black Lace came out in the early 60s, and this movie was in Italian, so I had to pay attention. I know some people don't like foreign films because, damn it, gotta read. But you know what? Hey, some of these movies are worth checking out, and I know people like to sometimes watch movies that are translated, but, sometimes you lose something in it, so, you know what? Hey, you know what? That's fine. You know what? You should be paying attention to the movie anyway, that way you can enjoy it more. Blood and Black Lace is a movie about you have this fashion house, and apparently someone is killing the models, and these are attractive, very beautiful models, and it's basically it has the style of what would become known as the Giallo. You have the attractive women being killed by some unknown individual, and basically you have a kind of variation of the Three Little Indians, or 10 Little Indians, I guess, however that story goes. But essentially, it's, you basically work your way down from victim to victim. And oftentimes, in most Giallos, the police force is usually not that effective at what they're doing. So, they're trying to figure out what's going on. You have a lot of leads, suspects everywhere. And ultimately, in every Giallo, you get pretty good conclusion. Now, I know there's a lot of discussion as to what constitutes a Giallo. Usually, I would say the general consensus is it's a crime story. You got whodunit type situation. You have a police investigation trying to figure out what's going on. But More importantly, the movies are not supernatural. There is nothing. I mean, these are conventional crime thrillers. Now, eventually, a lot of them would become, more horror movie-ish, with more blood and guts, and more creative kills. But there were still crime stories. You have a killer basically taking people out. So, Blood and Black Lace was one of the first giallos made by Mario Bava, and it's an impressive movie. I mean, I really, really recommend watching it. Because it's one of the forerunners of the Giallo movement. And when you're watching these movies, you kind of get a feel for what slasher films would be inspired by. As a matter of fact, one of the later Giallos would basically inspire just about every slasher movie. That would be Bay of Blood by Mario Bava, which he would make 10 years later. You watch that movie, and then the first thing that's going to come to mind is, wait a minute, I've seen this before. Yeah, because Friday the 13th pretty much copied it, and just about every other slasher movie did. Okay, so that was Blood and Black Lace. I found that on Shudder. Shudder's got a nice little collection of Giallo movies that you can check out. The next one is a movie, actually goes by a couple of names. The Girl Who Knew Too Much, I believe, is the, let me check the title on that. The Girl Who Knew Too Much. Sometimes I will look down, because these are all unedited. I do them impromptu, so just so you know, I don't want to, cut and splice these things, because I don't have that kind of time. I'd rather just do this off the top of my head. Now, the Girl Who Talked Too Much is another Giallo. It's by Mario Bava, and this one is about a young lady who travels to Italy to take care of an ailing, family member. Once there, she has some. I guess I'm not sure if it's insomnia or she just has, she's out late at night and she witnesses a murder. And oh, no, strike that. Her relative is having some health problems, so she has to run out to try to look for a doctor. I'm getting my movies confused here, but and she witnesses a murder. The problem that she encounters, though, is that the murder was something that she's not sure about. The character is mugged, and she's knocked out by somebody, and when she wakes up, she's not sure what's going on, because there's no evidence of the crime, and no one's aware of any disappearance, and everyone thinks she's crazy. So it is very it's a really good story, because you as the viewer see what happens, so a crime happened. Now, of course, the story is basically her trying to figure out, did it happen? Is it in her head? And she essentially has to find evidence that it did occur, because meanwhile, while she's, trying to recover and figure out what happened, there is someone looking for her, because they know that she witnessed this crime. So yeah, they're coming after her. Commento cachu, Barbara. So the next movie I saw was called $5. Give me a second here. It was called $5 for an August Moon. Now, this one was directed also by Mario Bava. This one came a little later, so this is in the 1970s. This one's a little less standard Giallo movie. It still is one, and this one's more of another variation of the 10 Little Indian or 12 Little Indians, 10 little, however many Indians it is. You have a group of people, wealthy investors, who go to an island, and they meet this inventor who has come up with one of the most revolutionary chemicals, compounds, which will make whoever has the access or rights to it wealthy. So you have a collection of people who want to encourage him to invest with them, and if necessary, we'll get that formula. So one by one, various people begin to die, and now this particular movie was interesting in that by this time the Giallo movement was kind of like catching on. You started seeing more movies coming out. You get a collection of extremely beautiful ladies. I believe Edwige Fenech, Edwige Fenech is in this movie. If you don't know who she is this amazingly beautiful actress who was in a lot of these movies back in the 70s. Very attractive, very beautiful. Look her up. She was outstanding in this movie. Now, the story itself, like I said, is a whodunit. People start turning up. There's a little bit of humor in the movie, because as the bodies start piling up, what they do to them is kind of almost comical because they are on an island and they don't really have access to medical facilities or law enforcement, so they kind of have to get creative in the way they store the bodies. So it's a little interesting, and it's one of the lesser liked movies by Mario Bava, but it's still interesting. Now a year later he would make Bay of Blood, which I highly recommend. I mean, if you want to look for a really great movie by Mario Bava, Bay of Blood is probably in my top three. Along with Black Sunday and Planet of the Vampires. Those are like my three favorite Mario Bava movies. But he has a lot of movies, a lot of great movies, and they're not all Giallos. Well, most of them are, but they're all great movies. Now, the last Giallo that I watched this week is called The Black Belly of the Tarantula. I found this movie on Amazon Prime. This is probably the more slashery of the Giallo movies I watched this week. It basically has a person going around, and what he does is he targets these young women, and he paralyzes them, and then he murders them in a fashion similar to a tarantula. So basically what you have is you've got a slasher killer taking out attractive women and doing so in a particular manner. Now, this movie was pretty interesting. I really liked it. It was very gory, and the creative way that the killer takes out the victims was pretty impressive. I mean, this movie, I believe, came out in the 70s, and it certainly does have the elements of a slasher movie, and it certainly is a movie that was it's a great movie. I mean, it has a good cast. Giancarlo Giannini is actually in the movie. I know I've seen him in a bunch of more recent movies, but he's a young actor in this one, and the it's very stylized. I mean, by this time Giallo movies were getting really creative. I mean, you had you had good use of visual elements. You had sound. I mean, a lot of these Giallos started using rock and roll scores. Often by a band called Goblin. And so what you were getting is not so much your typical, cookie cutter movie. I mean, you were getting these like visual displays, along with a story that was, pretty interesting. So those were the Giallos that I watched this week, and gonna look for some more. I'm probably gonna switch over to Argento because this is about the time when Dario Argento would release his Giallo films, starting out with The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. I don't know what that. Yeah, well, and then working your way up to movies like Profondo Rosso and Tenebrae. But I'll get on that on another video because Argento is essential horror. You gotta watch Dario Argento if you want to get into horror. So those were the movies that I watched this week. So it was a good collection of movies. Need to find some movies to watch this week though, because as I start going through the list of movies to watch, I'm finding it a little harder to find movies that are interesting. The 300 challenge that I gave to myself was to find 300 movies I haven't watched before, and thing is, my watch list is becoming a little harder to find on some of these movies, so I'm going to have to start relying on Netflix by mail to get some of these movies, because not everything is on Tubi or Netflix or Shudder or Amazon Prime, and if some of the more mainstream movies that I want to check out, I might have to bring out the credit card and pay for them, which, it's what you should do. We want to support, the streaming services and especially indie cinema because, when you put the movies on for free, they're not really free. I mean, you pay for the services. And even Tubi, which is a supposed free service, is ad supported. You watch commercials. And what you want to do, watch these movies, because the more people who watch these movies, the directors, they get the recognition, and then you want to seek out their other movies, and that's what you want to do. I mean, because, hey, we want to encourage more people to watch horror. So, that sums up the Losman 300 challenge. Let's take a look and see some of the other things that went down this week. Earlier today, well, actually, not recently, in the past 2 hours or so, I had quite an evening. I went to my local Alamo Draft House, and I got to watch a fun little show. It was called How Rednecks Save Hollywood. It was an oral presentation by Joe Bob Briggs, who is known to many of y'all, for his TV show on Shudder and also Monster Vision on TNT. He basically does a little hour and a half lecture with visual aids, summing up influential movies that talked about rednecks and redneck culture. I mean, he even goes back to the origin of what a redneck is. It was entertaining. I really liked it. A lot of the movies he talked about were really obscure movies, but I did recognize a lot of them. I mean, he made reference to movies like White Lightning and Gator and Convoy, and but then he also brought up some other movies that are a little more obscure. A lot of the movies like more revenge-based movies like Deliverance and I Spit on Your Grave, and of course there were some granddaddy ones which I won't bring up because if you get a chance to watch it, it's worth checking out. The presentation was fun. He went up there. He was just giving a nice little lecture and demonstration. It was pretty fun. Good. It was a good evening. I got to meet Joe Bob again. I met him last year when he did a presentation for Basket Case, and of course got to meet his mail girl Darcy, aka Diana Prince, who she's awesome. She's beautiful. Saw her, gave her a big hug, and she encouraged me to keep posting and keep putting out more info on my blog. So I'm gonna start working on my blog more because hey, I want to get some more people out there, checking out what I have to say and checking out my old website. Speaking of that, I got another fun tweet from a gentleman talking about how he enjoyed my website quite a bit and he spent many hours checking it out. So that's always good to find out. I really enjoy hearing from people who remembered my website from back in the day. And I know if you follow me on Twitter, I'm always making reference to the old website, or the old site, as I usually call it. But yeah, so I think over the summer, I'm going to start, putting up, making some improvements on the new site so that way I can start, getting more people to go over there and check stuff out. And once it's set up properly, then I'll be able to link all my YouTube videos, and then I'll be able to start doing videos related to specific movie titles. I know, like, I do this Lazy Sunday Roundup, but what I want to also start doing is something more akin to like a podcast, but a video one where I basically talk about a movie and discuss it for like about 5 or 10 minutes. Particular movies of note. I'm gonna that way we can have little fun fact based descriptions and my personal experiences with movies because I watch a lot of movies and all that. So when I was there, I got this. I got my copy of Fangora magazine autographed by Joe Bob Briggs, so that was pretty cool. It's funny because I also got him to autograph one of my other copies, and that was pretty neat. Now, what I also want to do before I take off is I want to talk about a movie that is starting to show up on HBO and the other sites out there, and I really highly recommend this movie. It's called Upgrade. Now, Upgrade is action movie that was released by Blumhouse last year, and it was directed by Lee Whannell, I believe is his name. He was the guy behind Saw, or he appeared in Saw actually, and he's also appeared in some other movies. This is an amazing movie. I went to go see it last year in the theater, and wow, I will tell you this. In the 1980s, when action movies were king, there were a couple of movies that really made quite an impact on me. I know last week I talked about movies like Alien and The Thing and Star Wars. By the way, Star Wars 42nd anniversary yesterday. So may the force be with you. But in the 80s, as I was a teenager growing up, there were some really truly eventful movies that came out and were like experiences. One of them was the Terminator, the James Cameron movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. That was a hell of a movie. I mean, it's like, wow. I mean, as you know, they're releasing another Terminator movie or Sarah Connor or something like that. I don't know about that. I mean, honestly, I love Terminator. I love Terminator 2. After that, it's kind of telling the same story over and over again. So it's like, really, it's not really truthful to say, can you really tell the same story over and over again? Because, think about it. How many Dracula movies have been released? Which, by the way, today's Dracula Appreciation Day because today's the anniversary of the release of Bram Stoker's Dracula. And There's got to be like something like about over 100 Dracula movies. I mean, that's a conservative estimate. I know there's way more than that. But going back to Upgrade, another movie that I remembered watching in the 80s was RoboCop. And now the original RoboCop was tremendously amazing. It was a action extravaganza. It was directed by Paul Verhoeven, I believe. Starred Peter Weller and Nancy Allen. And impressive. I mean, as a kid, I watched that movie. Somehow I was able to sneak into it apparently, or maybe I don't know. For whatever reason, I mean, it was a very rated R movie, and I was about 15, 16 at the time when it came out. But yeah, that movie was incredible. It was wonderful and amazing. And I remember when it came out on video, yeah, I had to check it out. The reason why I bring that up is that's what the movie Upgrade reminded me of. I know they made a remake of RoboCop recently with Michael Keaton of all people, and I watched it. Yeah. Uh-huh. No. 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 That is why when I watched Upgrade, I thought to myself, Upgrade would have been a much better, more successful movie. And I mean, it was a small movie, mind you. It was a great, incredible movie. But imagine if that had been called RoboCop, or RoboCop had that plot element. Yeah, that's what Upgrade was like for me. I mean, it was like watching RoboCop back in the 80s. I mean, it was just exciting. It was bloody. It was violent. It was exciting. It was an absolute action intensive thriller, with a great plot, characters that you really felt for, and it just had some kick-ass action scenes, so if you haven't watched it, put it on your watch list. It is an outstanding movie. I mean, if you love action movies, if you love movies like The Aliens or The Terminator or Predator, watch Upgrade. It is truly one of the outstanding action movies of the past decade, and with the blood and violence in it, I would qualify it as a horror movie because it is very bloody in there. I mean, the movie is extremely bloody and very action intensive. But as I wind this up, it looks like I've gone over 20 minutes with this, and like with a lot of these videos, I want to try to get some good get some good discussion out, throw it out there. Encourage people to watch movies. I know one of the things I'll do is talk about the 300 list that I'm doing, and of course bring out a visual aid to help out, usually a magazine or a movie of that I watched, and other things that go down. I know next month there's going to be another fan convention that I'm going to check out, so we'll see how that goes. Threw down a lot of money at Texas Frightmare Weekend, so I might have to watch my budget a bit because fan conventions aren't cheap. But there are some people I'd like to meet, so I'll definitely want to go out there and check out some more conventions. And if I get an opportunity to meet some of y'all out there, that'd be awesome. I mean, there's some great people I'm meeting on Twitter and Instagram, so they're part of a horror family, and I definitely want to encourage them and give them a shout out, to let them know, hey,